Well, so when I first saw this, I literally cracked my knuckles and was ready to jump down the IWF's throat once again.
Zach, you messaged me and said, Seb, are you going to take this or am I going to take it? Because someone's got to do a video on it. And to my knowledge, neither of us have yet. So it is the African Championships. There's an article called Athlete Slam, Shameful Conditions, African Weightlifting Championships. Again, to fill people in who don't know, initially the African Champs were supposed to be in Mauritius, then they got moved to Madagascar, and then they couldn't go ahead in Madagascar because they had an outbreak. So then I think it was about 2 weeks notice, it got moved to Kenya, and that's where this really awfully put together competition has taken place. So the weird thing about this competition is that technically it's not needed anymore to qualify for the Olympics. Because of the COVID outbreak, they got rid of the third qualifying period. Well, they didn't get rid of it, but they said if you want to use a competition from there, you can. If you don't have to. So the WFA, the Weightlifting Federation of Africa, basically wanted to provide an equal chance for African weightlifters who are in similarly difficult positions to athletes from other, parts of the world, so that they could try and qualify if they weren't in a great position. And then you have videos of like Waleed Badani, who just literally snatched 201 kilos, so amazing weightlifters, lifting in a car park on like a dodgy mat, and there's a car 2 yards away, like turning over them. Zack's already breaking down. I can't wait for this. They've got this makeshift rickety uneven platform. You guys have all seen the memes. Let's make sure we have some memes around us so people see them if they haven't. And then the last thing I'll say is, this is a quote from Inside the Games. Khaled Mahelhel, who's the president of the Weightlifting Federation of Africa, insisted the WFA was right to go ahead with the championships despite difficult circumstances after 3 earlier postponements during the coronavirus pandemic. And then he said, his quote, "The federations wanted the championships." So apparently they were pushed to do it. Zach, you're jumping to get in. What are your thoughts?
Well, so when I first saw this, I literally cracked my knuckles and was ready to jump down the IWF's throat once again, because that's, I guess, what I do these days. But I guess this is mainly on the WFA, right?
Yeah. It's like, whose fault is it? It's hard to know. Is it the WFA? Is it the Kenyan Weightlifting Federation? Is it IWF? I think it's probably the WFA.
Yeah, and obviously foresight is something that the IWF lacks, and a lot of professionalism is something that they lack, so they could have always done better. Would it have been possible to have had this competition in a country that wasn't in Africa, and potentially maybe closer, that had a better infrastructure, that allowed... it could have been a hub for athletes to travel to that had COVID protocols. Like, just because it's... I understand, like, you want African championships to be in Africa, but if it's some bordering country or somewhere near there, is it a possibility? I mean, crazier things have been done in this time with COVID and all these restrictions.
But that's the question, isn't it? Like, is it the fact that, because obviously when the Worlds went to, say, Anaheim, it was USAW who had to pay for that. So with this competition in Kenya, was it Kenya who had to pay, and therefore Kenya couldn't afford it, or was it the fact that it was too late and they didn't have time? You know what I mean? I don't know which
I would say both, actually, right? I mean, it would be the fact that this was thrown together. Like, it's one thing to slap together a meet in California when it was off the back of the American Open. People forget that, we weren't supposed to have the World Championships, but the American Open, which is one of the biggest meets in the world, if not the biggest meet in the world, with the most competitors, the most working platforms, was literally 1 week prior.
Right.
So they didn't really have to do much. That's what I mean. Infrastructure was already set up. So they slapped together a world meet, and it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit, it was, as far as like being the spectator go, like the bleachers were like weren't that great, but it was fine, right? The athletes had a lot of accommodations. It was pretty good. Now, if you're slapping together a meet in Kenya,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like
with 2 weeks notice.
You're gonna get dudes lifting in a parking lot, and and some of those videos are hilarious. And I hope to God Alex is putting some over the top of me talking right now.
Oh, he
because
is.
I saw that and I was laughing like. And then also the platform, the competition platform was rickety. It had cracks up and down. Like
moving.
Yeah. You know, there's not much equipment involved in weightlifting, and every piece of equipment in that meet was off. So,
and apparently, this is. I was actually talking to Tack Zoolander, the meme page. Who I don't know who runs that page. I assume it's not actually you, Zack.
It's not me. No.
But I was talking to them, and they were talking to Forrester, who's on the athlete board. Who's from Ghana, so he was maybe going to be competing at this competition. But I believe it was Forrester who told Tack Zoolander that the WFA was given $200,000 as a budget for this. And clearly $200,000 was not put into this competition. And it could be that there's a mistake in the communication there, but that's what I was led to believe by that conversation.
I think it's...
Albeit, I mean, bear in mind, I'm taking a meme count as like my...
Well, in comparison to the IWF, it's probably more reputable than the IWF. So, I mean, as far as I'd be concerned, I feel like the IWF are mostly responsible here. Like continental events, they have oversight. It's the international federation. They have to have some kind of say, some kind of quality assurance for meets like that. Probably not going to blame someone who had 2 weeks to set up an international, continental event like that. I'm going to more than likely.
But why don't you think it's the WFA's problem? Because like they're the ones who. They could have not done it. And imagine if the IWF said, all right, we're not having this. And then like the outrage of people being like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't let the African Championships go ahead because you didn't think it was going to look good enough. Like they were probably in a tough situation as well.
My favorite thing about the whole thing is just how much the qualification for the Olympics has kind of gone to shit. Like no one really knows what's happening now. It changes so often. It's just got the mushy shit. Like there's just no one knows what's happening. Like athletes were under the impression they would have to do continental events. Like the fact that it came down to 2 weeks beforehand is what I'm saying I would blame the IWF for. Like it should have never happened. Mm-hmm. Like the coronavirus has been here since 2020. Like they've had a whole year to be like, you know what happens? It might not be gone next year, so maybe we should plan this out a little bit better. Maybe we should have Zoom call meetings instead of in-person meetings. That's who I'm blamed. So like, if you look at just the micro level, if you're looking at the WFA or whatever, you could blame them. But you could have blamed someone who let this be in the situation. No athlete should be unsure 4 months before the Olympics or 3 months before the Olympics what they need to do to qualify. They should know, like, early the start of this year, everything should have been laid out before that, if even, would be my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's like looking at the athlete who got popped and saying they're the problem, and then not looking at the fact that it was the coach, and then it was the system, and then it was the country. Like, you're right. Yeah, maybe we just have to move back and back until we see the IWF as the people at fault. Anything else on that topic before we move on?
Apparently, from what I know, most African championships are usually very well run. Like they're usually fairly good. So it's not a symptom of which some people might have thought from some of the comments I saw that is African champions always run like this, but apparently they're very well run. Like from what I've seen.